My name is Richard Morellis, and I want to welcome you to the Prison Post. This is your podcast for conversations surrounding the need to reform prisons from the perspective of formerly incarcerated people, community members, and leaders in the restorative justice movement. The Prison Post will feature an episode every Wednesday with people who are in the fight to restore lives and heal communities.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Prison Post. My name is Richard Morellis. This is my co-host, Jason Bryant.
Hello, everyone.
Today we have our guest with us, Dr. Jeffery Ian Ross, and I'll be giving an introduction for him in a second, but I wanted to just tell everybody that we're welcoming Jason back after being featured on Lisa Ling's season 7 premiere of This Is Life with Lisa Ling on CNN. Jason, it was a powerful piece, an emotionally moving piece. Your story and the stories of everybody involved moved the hearts of this nation and brought healing in a powerful way. You know, to me, it was just what the doctor ordered. I mean, I was sitting right next to you and I knew the story and I still got emotional, was crying a little bit. So if any of our subscribers, followers, or listeners haven't seen it yet, it's definitely a must see. You can see it on CNN, Hulu, YouTube. It's literally one of the most authentic, honest pieces of journalism that I've ever seen. I just want to give thanks to Jason and to Jim and Mia Micheletti, Palma School, our brothers in Soledad, and Lisa Ling. Thank you.
Yeah, it was an incredible opportunity and a humbling experience, to say the least.
Were you able to catch it, Dr. Ross?
No, I wasn't, but they often replay those episodes by Lisa Ling, so I'm going to try to catch it on another time round. Alternatively, if you've got a link and you can send it to me, I'd love to see it.
You got it. You got it.
Perfect.
Like I said, today our guest is Dr. Jeffery Ian Ross, PhD. He's a professor in the School of Criminal Justice, College of Public Affairs, and a research fellow of the Center for International and Comparative Law and the Schaefer Center for Public Policy at the University of Baltimore. Dr. Ross has been a visiting professor at Ruhr Universität Bochum, Germany, and the University of Padua, Italy. He has researched, written, and lectured primarily on corrections, policing, political crime, state crime, crimes of the powerful, violence, street culture, and crime and justice in American and Indian communities for over the last 2 decades. Dr. Ross's work has appeared in many academic journals and books, as well as popular media. He is the co-founder of Convict Criminology and the author, co-author, editor, or co-editor of several books, including 7 of them on correctional facilities, prisoners, and ex-convicts. Some of the titles include Behind Bars, Surviving Prison, Convict Criminology, Special Problems in Corrections, Beyond Bars, Rejoining Society After Prison, and the Globalization of Supermax Prisons. So welcome to the Prison Post, Dr. Ross. We're happy to have you with us today.
Thanks, Richard and Jason, for inviting me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You know, Dr. Ross, I'd like to start off with a story in the beginning. We touched on it a little bit when we first talked, but you know, like I like to say sometimes, you know, I believe in providence. You know, some people call it luck, some people call it chance, coincidence, but you know, for me, it's providence. And I've been watching the puzzle pieces come together for the work we were doing for a decade in there with the CROP organization and the work that we continue to do today. It was over 10 years ago when I first met Jason Bryant and our executive director of CROP organization, Ted Gray. Ted was close friends with someone who we all consider our brother, Eugene Day. They are both visionaries. They're both very scholarly. They're far more well-read in this space than I am. And when I first met them, Eugene had just published a piece in the Journal for Prisoners on Prisoners, a JPP, and called Convict Clinicians. And they had this, what seemed like an insane idea at the time, that we could get guys in prison certified to become state certified alcohol and drug counselors, which wasn't happening at the time. And those of us who are incarcerated could become the counselors, AOD counselors, alcohol and drug counselors for those of our brothers and sisters who are incarcerated. Mm-hmm. They took that idea and we began working on building a team, brainstorming, and we ended up bringing that to fruition. But what I didn't know early on was that Eugene's inspiration for convict clinicians was your work, Convict Criminology, on convict criminology in your book. And Eugene would always read these JPPs, and they read a lot of what sometimes at the time I thought were a lot of scholarly, very scholarly, dry articles. And then I started reading it. I said, wow, this stuff is profound. And they were always passing it to me and Jason to read. And so we just want to thank you for your work. Your work was an inspiration for our work. And Jason could share a little bit more on what has come to pass since then, since that your ideas came out, you published your ideas, they inspired Eugene inspired Ted, they cast a vision, and then some amazing things have come about since then. Go ahead, Jay.
Sure. It's really fascinating because initially the idea that Eugene was inspired by your writing was to have incarcerated people serve as tour guides for the prison. Because basically what he got from your literature was that the people who were closest to the pain points typically have the best solutions to the problems. And that's kind of where our programming efforts really started. And it's interesting how it kind of comes full circle, because particularly in society today, in California especially, there's a term going around called the importance of proximate leadership. The people who are closest to the pain points are the ones that typically have great solutions on how to rectify those issues. So just to kind of mirror what Richard's saying, your contributions on the other side of the country impacted us in a way and really propelled our work in many ways. So we're extremely grateful for your thoughts and the work that you've done.
Well, thank you so much. What an ego boost.
Yeah, for sure. We were in Soledad for a long time, and by the grace of God, today we're out, we're free, and we're not only did it have an impact on our vision, but 33 of our men went through our alcohol and drug counseling program. Today they're utilizing their certification. They utilized their certification on the main line while we were in. We infiltrated the self-help groups, the rehabilitative groups, the rehabilitative community, and even what the prison eventually began to offer through substance abuse programs, SUD programs. And all of our guys were just completely immersed in all the programs. And they utilized their certification in powerful ways to transform lives. And we had a vision to transform the culture of prison. Today, all but 3 or 4 of them are thriving in the community with careers of service as AOD counselors. I know that Eugene is still on the editorial board of the JPP today. And so, it's just, you never know how the work that you're doing is making an impact completely across the country, even in a small prison in Soledad, California. So just grateful to have you.
And we should,
go ahead. Those are amazing accomplishments. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead, guys.
No, it's okay. I just wanted to say, we're sharing some of our appreciation for how your work has inspired us. And one of the questions I had for you, Dr. Ross, is where did your inspiration come from to begin this work?
It's a great question. I'm actually a political scientist by training, and that's the discipline in which I earned my PhD. But early in my professional career, I discovered that my scholarship best fit in the fields of criminology and criminal justice. And I think in many respects, more importantly, I like hanging out with criminologists more than I like hanging out with political scientists. That being said, I have a number of life experiences that made me better suited to be a criminologist. I worked close to 4 years in a correctional facility. And I swore that on the day that I left my job and entered into initially a master's program and then a PhD, that I'd never set foot again in a correctional facility in any shape or capacity. And, here I am several years later doing research and trying to help both convicts and ex-convicts, find a voice for their work and for their struggles, and to make some noticeable changes in the correctional system in the United States. So there's also another thing too, it's kind of a joke that I tell people, and that's, but it is based on reality. About 1/3 of the people who I grew up with, my friends became lawyers. Another third of them were criminal justice practitioners, like police officers, and the balance were criminals. So, like the famous author M. Scott Peck has argued, I took the road less traveled.
Mm-hmm. Great book.
Yeah, definitely. We always recommend that book to our friends. What was it? What was your experience there working in corrections that led to you having that perspective that I'm never going back again?
Well, I found that the majority of people who came to our facility, and this was a unique facility, people came to our facility to get 1 day, 30, 60, and 90-day evaluations to determine whether or not they were fit to stand trial and whether or not they were suffering from a major mental illness. And at the commonality I found was that the majority of people who had a contact with the criminal justice system had some sort of psychological problem, and they came maybe from a broken home. They didn't get the proper kinds of inputs, and behind it all, I found that a lot of the resources that they could have gotten from the state, the government, were not there when they were most and critically needed. And that's why I went into political science. I wanted to look at those broader issues of where governments work and where they fail. And but it cycled back, and it all brought me back to the initial challenges, and that be the challenge of corrections and people who are behind bars and experiencing prison and jail, and people who are undergoing reentry and how they can best succeed when they're out. So that's it in a nutshell.
Sure. Do you, in your experience, do you believe that incarcerated people suffer further psychological trauma through incarceration itself?
I would say the majority of them do. The time behind bars reinforces a lot of the worst tendencies in people. Getting rehabilitated behind bars is extremely difficult. The environment is not conducive for education or for rehabilitation, though there are plenty of exceptions, like the people who've gone through your classes and who have and courses, and who upon release have contributed back to their community, and they've been free from the criminal justice system in terms of being rearrested and or being sent back to prison. So some people do thrive, but most people, a time behind bars is generally a time that where a person gets worse psychologically, emotionally, among other things. They'll lose contact with their wife, girlfriend, children, parents, and this is not a good thing. Among other negative, impacts from a time spent behind bars. Sometimes it's a time for reflection. Some people do use the time wisely. They get, drug-free, alcohol-free, and it's a time to reflect, maybe start getting into a regular pattern of exercise, a regular pattern of reading and studying, and maybe finally getting that GED, or maybe even taking a few community college classes, or some specializations, some skills that might assist them when they're upon release in terms of, anger management, drug counseling, alcohol counseling, like you mentioned before, and job skills training.
It's interesting. Go ahead, Jason.
I was just going to ask him, Dr. Ross, if he would unpack for our viewers and listeners a little bit about what convict criminology is.
Yeah, my pleasure. So, although convict criminology has been called a group, a movement, an organization, or a school or a theory, it's primarily a network. If you don't like the word network, then use the word platform, although they're not necessarily interchangeable. But we're united in the perception that the convict voice has been neglected or minimized in scholarship and policy debates in criminal justice in general and in corrections in particular. So it's mainly for people who are incarcerated or formerly incarcerated, who've earned a PhD in the fields of criminology or criminal justice, or in an allied field, who are working on a doctorate. And I'm going to get to some more of the nitty gritty here. So We also include people who've been justice impacted, like they had a parent or a child who was incarcerated. And it also includes prison activists who share our mission. The question you may ask, and your listeners and viewers may ask, is why the PhD? And clearly, there are a lot of articulate convicts and ex-convicts. You and I know them. You guys are very well spoken, and you've got lots of unique insights, lots of interesting things to say. But earning a PhD from an accredited university in the field of criminology, criminal justice, or an allied field generally means that you can critically analyze the field of corrections in a social scientific manner. So you can go head to head, toe to toe with people who are experts who have a PhD.
That's great. Well, I don't know if I'm in the right field, but I have a master's degree in philosophy, and I wrote my thesis on the value of rehabilitative programs in prison. So maybe my retirement plan is to go back to school and get my PhD in philosophy. Maybe there's some points of connection there. Write a dissertation on that possibly.
No question about it. I mean, there's points of connection now. I mean,
sure.
We have people who have bachelors and masters, and they're contributing to the overall mission. But in general, the initial focus was people who were working on their PhD, who were ex-cons or justice impacted prison activists. We can all contribute. We can all help each other in the collective mission.
Sure, absolutely.
Dr. Ross, in 20 years, over 20 years of incarceration myself, I don't think, besides Jason earning 2 master's degrees while he was incarcerated, I've met a handful of other guys who earned a master's degree, but I never met one who earned a doctorate. And I'm curious of how many. Well, first of all, I don't remember there being a doctorate program from an accredited university that we could even attend because of the technology in there. In the prison that we were in, I think that federal prisons are a little bit different, but state prisons in California, they're not allowing us internet access. They're not allowing us to do, online courses at all. So I was just curious how many incarcerated first and then formerly incarcerated are actually coming out to earn their PhDs, and specifically in the fields that you mentioned.
Another great question. So people come and go as part of the network. It's always been very fluid. And so and it's not just simply limited to the United States. We have people who are part of convict criminology in other countries like Canada, UK, Australia, New Zealand, and also in Europe. And so at its height, we've had 50 to 100 people who have PhDs, who have been formally incarcerated, who've been affiliated with convict criminology. So here's the thing, and you correctly identified it, is that it's difficult to get any formal education higher than a GED in most correctional facilities. And it's a struggle to get a bachelor's or a master's from an accredited university behind bars. So what happens, there's basically, 2 kinds of models. There are people who already have a PhD, and then they are convicted of some sort of crime, and they spend time behind bars. And then upon release, they find out about us, or while they're behind bars, they find out about us, and they make the connection with people who are part of the network, and then they start contributing to our network. Alternatively, it's someone who either has a GED or has a bachelor's or a master's that they've earned behind bars, and upon release, we help them to get into a accredited PhD program, and thus they graduate with the PhD. And then there's a whole mentoring process that we try to help these individuals with, both while they're behind bars and upon release. And I'll give you an example. Let's make things kind of concrete right now. So about a week ago, I got an email from a individual who was released in the spring of this year from a federal penitentiary. And he told me that he had met me while I had given a series of lectures at some FBOP facilities. And I didn't remember the gentleman, and he even said that we corresponded together. And I started recalling that there was some correspondence I had with him, but I don't know the nature and the substance of the correspondence. But he said, "Hey, listen, I want to do, enroll in a bachelor's program where he can benefit from the kinds of things I teach." And I explained to him the nuances of different programs, and found out also in the meantime that he had completed 2 years university at a university. So and so what I did was, so I had that information, and then fortuitously, another colleague emailed me and said, "Hey, listen, I have a program that gives university level credits to formerly incarcerated people, and do you know anybody who might benefit?" So I was able to put the individual who contacted me and the person I know who's offering a course together, and he has free tuition.
Wow.
He has the benefit of a university level class. And at the very end of it, our mutual hope, that is both the student, the instructor, and myself, that stepping stone will make his application to a formal university program all the more attractive. And so there may be another course at the university that my colleague is offering that he may be able to avail himself of, or a whole program that he might be able to avail himself from. But he just took one step further to completing his university's bachelor's degree. And it, you don't get, you don't move forward at lightning speed. It's incremental, and but you do make progress if you have the right attitude and you have the right people, in your corner assisting you and helping you to navigate the rough waters of academia and university education.
What are some of the problems that you and this network of academics are hoping to solve? Are they more internal, like inside of institutions, or are they more external, like the way that members of society are actually viewing our incarcerated populations?
I think that we are trying to bring more attention to prisons and jails, to reentry, by people who have actually been incarcerated. And like you said, earlier, this notion that people who are closest to the pain often have the best solutions, and so I think that's part of it. But I think what one of the problems with the study of prisons, jails, and corrections in prisons is the following, and that is so much of the research that has been done on corrections has been done from a quantitative perspective, and in general, there's nothing inherently wrong with a quantitative approach, but there are some drawbacks to a disproportionately quantitative approach to the study of corrections. That's one thing. But there is another aspect too, and that is as it concerns the classroom, and that is when formerly incarcerated people are brought to the classroom as students and as instructors, they provide an additional perspective. So let me be more specific. Okay, so many criminologists were criminal justice practitioners or currently criminal justice practitioners, particularly if they're teaching part-time. So they're former police officers or administrators or former lawyers, judges, public defenders, prosecutors. They may even be former correctional officers or administrators, parole probation officers. Rarely do we see people who have had firsthand experience with the criminal justice system as perpetrators of crime, or someone who has been convicted of a crime and spent time behind bars working as a criminologist. And so that piece of the puzzle has been lacking. Many of these individuals who have, lived experiences can contribute to the mission of criminology and criminal justice.
Why do you think that their voices have been silenced for so long?
Okay, so one is that there have not been a lot of people coming out of prison who have earned a PhD, and who have also chosen to work as a university instructor. That's one thing. Second is, to a certain extent, I think there has in previous decades a bias towards people who have a criminal background. I think universities have become, over the last, say, 20 years, more accepting of people who have a criminal conviction. So there's a lot more, say, tolerance for people who've had a criminal conviction. We've also had to battle things like ban the box, the numerous ways that an electronic jacket can accumulate, and the criminal background checks that universities have engaged in. Those sorts of things have been difficult in the past. But I think the field of criminology and criminal justice has become a lot more liberal or accepting, and realizing that this is really a missing piece of the puzzle. Here's another thing too, is that some of the people who graduate from, some of the people who have done time behind bars, they have chosen, if they've done a PhD, they've chosen to not do a PhD in the field of criminology or criminal justice or in allied social science. They want nothing to do with that field. Those sorts of questions don't interest them for one reason or another, or they repel them. They don't want to have anything to do with those kinds of questions because it may remind them of their former self or the trauma they experienced behind bars. And I get it, and we get it too. And so, in fact, one of my closest colleagues, he did a PhD, I think, in medical research, and he found it very difficult to get a job because of prohibitions of hiring people with criminal backgrounds doing this kind of research in that field. But he found that in the field of criminology and criminal justice, he was welcomed with open arms. And he could do research in that area. So he had to, file that chapter away of his previous self and kind of retool so that he was more accepted in the field of criminology and criminal justice.
We can kind of speak to that a little bit as well. I know that through our experience, there was typically two different attitudes from people who were serving time, especially when they came close to their parole dates. One attitude was, as soon as I'm out of this place, I'm never looking back. I don't want to think about this place. I don't want to have any memories of it. It was one of the worst times in my life. And I don't ever want to reflect on it or reference it. But then there's another attitude. I mean, you're sitting with two guys right now who have committed our lives to this work. And there is a healthy community, particularly of people who have served long amounts of time in prison and who have really come to an authentic transformation in themselves and identified the value in adding value to in contributing to this conversation in particular of criminal justice reform and how to help us get things right. So there is a healthy community of people who are not only well-spoken, but well-educated as well, who are eager to contribute to this conversation.
Yeah, and many of us are looking forward to the opportunities of going back. And go ahead, Dr. Ross.
No, I said that's great to hear, and I think, Richard, I cut you off, but I kind of know where you're going. Yeah, you can go back inside a correctional facility, and you can serve as a mentor or a guide at some level to the people behind bars and say, hey, look, this is, outside's not going to be easy, but here are some things that you should expect, and we're willing to lend a helping hand as long as you do your own part. Again, I'm putting words in your own mouth. My apologies for that. So,
well, Jason and I and the rest of our crop directors have recently had the privilege of doing a biweekly show with the director of rehabilitative programs. He's over all programs for the California prison system, vocations, education. Our executive director and I, Ted Gray, and also Matthew Braden, who's on our team, we worked in the college department up there for, I don't know, maybe 6 years. We were the college clerks, and we could pinpoint, here's what's not working, here's what's working, here's how it could be better. And so I'm grateful that, we're having those opportunities to have those conversations where, it could become possible in the future. There's just now talk of funding for bachelor's programs. And you're right. I think there was 3 or 4 accredited universities that we could do paper-based bachelor's degrees for out here in California. It's very difficult. But I want to applaud that your belief system. I feel that we have a kindred spirit in this way, in that, you and your network would want the incarcerated and formerly incarcerated to earn their PhDs, earn their bachelor's degrees, their master's degrees, PhDs, and get involved in transforming the culture of the system. I'm sure they're doing work in criminal justice reform. Having those conversations with the people that can proverbially pull the trigger and make things happen. And that's sort of what we're doing at Crop Organization in a different way. We see that so many times that the stigma out here is that, why would he get a PhD? He would not be able to get a job. Or the stigma out here is that those who are coming out of prison probably only have the mindset to the mental capacity to work construction or do different types of jobs that, barely pay a livable wage. When we believe that it's possible, we've seen so many men, like Jason talked about, that are getting their education. They're hungry for education, that can come out here and thrive in any environment. And so we're in the business of creating opportunities for them to come out, get in the AOD industry, get advanced certifications in that field if they like, or in the tech industry. I think there's a stigma there as well that they couldn't be engineers, or they couldn't be involved in designing websites, or another aspect of our program is business to business sales in there. And we feel that they're human like anybody else. Give them an opportunity, and if the mindset is there to thrive, they'll thrive.
And what's more, after being in an environment, as you have shared, Dr. Ross, that is largely fashioned to punish, to isolate, and to traumatize, there's so many people who are eager and hungry to contribute, just hungry to contribute to meaningful work, meaningful intellectual conversations. They're excited, and they're just looking for the opportunity. So we definitely appreciate your network and your program that is creating some new opportunities for intellectual capital to be shared among the formerly and currently incarcerated populations.
Gotcha. Why did you form? Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Ross. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say that in California, at a handful of universities, they have this Project Rebound groups, and anyone interested in starting a bachelor's or continuing a bachelor's degree who's being released should check out the group on campus, because they form a sort of a mutual self-help kind of organization. I know that there's one at University of California, Long Beach, and I think there's one at University of California or California State, Sacramento. There's one down at the University of California, San Diego. So those are networks to tap in, and the state has given some money to these programs.
Yeah,
you were asking me a question earlier. Unless you want to build upon the Project Rebound.
Definitely, I'll build upon that and then come back with the question. But I'm grateful that you mentioned Project Rebound. In about a month or so, we'll be having a podcast interview with the director of Project Rebound out of Sacramento State University, who's also formerly incarcerated. served over 10 years in prison, and we're eager to get that message out for those who are, who are released and want to pursue, an academic education. But the question I was going to ask is, why did you form Convict Criminology?
Well, this is the origin story, and it dates back to the 1990s. And I was assembling an edited book, and I was asked a colleague if he knew anybody who could provide me feedback on the chapters that were in development. He said, speak to this guy, Stephen Richards, who had been formerly incarcerated, and he'd earned a PhD upon release. I got in touch with Stephen via phone, via email, and we clicked. And he agreed to give me feedback on those chapters. And through a series of conversations, we realized that we had a lot of similar opinions about prisons, about prisoners, about people who work in the institutions, criminal justice system, scholarship on all these subject matters. And so we met at the next American Society of Criminology conference, and we decided to build Convict Criminology. That's basically how that worked.
Great.
I noticed that you put an edit on the book, Convict Criminology. What would you speak to? Would you speak to the purpose of that?
Well, the very first book, Convict Criminology, that was published in 2003, was an edited book, and so it grew out of a series of panels that we held at the American Society of Criminology over the years, where our colleagues would present papers on different aspects of corrections and the criminal justice system. And we knew that it was important to release a book, and that an edited book would be a good vehicle to do that. It would consolidate a lot of the different voices at the time who were working, on the subject matter of prisons, people again who were formerly incarcerated, people who were justice impacted, people who were prison activists, and so that's how that all came together. And the foreword was done by John Irwin, and John Irwin he's since passed. He was one of a handful of people who were criminologists who had a significant time behind bars, and who was also a very prominent criminologist. So that was quite an honor for him to do that chapter, and to have the book come out.
In your years of experience in this work, Dr. Ross, I'm curious, what do you think it's going to take, not only to help the incarcerated population transform their lives, but to kind of change the psyche of America about the purpose of prisons in America and how we can better support our incarcerated people and help them to succeed upon reentry into our communities?
Well, let me tell you what Convict Criminology does. That's at least one step in that direction of addressing those challenges. We do three things. We do, number one, scholarly research. Number two, we do mentorship. And number three, we engage in policy work or activism. And some of our network believes that both scholarship and mentorship is activist in nature. And I believe that to a certain extent. But in terms of the last component, policy work and activism, we have served on commissions or panels that their task is to monitor certain elements connected to the criminal justice system or corrections. We've done that at the community level, we've done it at the city level, we've done it at the regional, state level, and we've done that at the national level. We've also done a lot of outreach through the news media, trying to get the message across that people who are incarcerated are like you and I. They're our sons and daughters, our brothers and sisters. They are our parents. They're deserving of humanity. They're deserving of a second chance. And the conditions inside prisons are not exactly how Hollywood portrays them, and we try to put put the images and stories into perspective. So many students and the public are fed a handful on a daily basis, a handful of myths on a daily basis, and this is I think this prevents meaningful reform. And if we can contribute to the public understanding the reality of prisons better, then we're moving in the right direction. Many Americans believe that people who are behind bars deserve to be punished, and the conditions that they're exposed to should be harsh. The time behind bars should be long. Many of them believe that we shouldn't, give people who are incarcerated access to free education. But we all know, at least the scholarship tells us, the rigorous scholarship tells us that that a high school education is not sufficient to get a job that allows you to put food on the table, to pay your bills, to take care of your loved ones, and that a minimum, a bachelor's degree is what's really needed in contemporary America in order to secure a reasonable job. And still we have people who have bachelor's degrees who are struggling. And it's even tougher because of COVID right now. So,
and then you throw in you throw in the stigma of someone having a criminal record on top of that. It almost makes employment impossible in many respects. So
yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. But the research says that if a formerly incarcerated person gets a bachelor's degree, the likelihood of, quote unquote, reoffending or being incarcerated again is diminished exponentially. Okay, so
less than 1%.
I agree. I mean, and so here's the thing: is that we should have, instead of having a bare minimum, getting a GED, the bare minimum should be a bachelor's degree. Now, not every person who is incarcerated wants to do a bachelor's degree, is capable of doing a bachelor's degree, but if they want to, that opportunity should be available to them and at minimal cost. They shouldn't have to depend upon their family, who is 99% of the time impoverished, who is having a tough time making ends meet, pay for this or getting into debt like so many Americans do, even the people who are not in prison. I mean, many countries in this world, education is free, if not, that is post-secondary education is free, and or it's of minimal cost.
And if I can just throw out like an interesting little fact to, the segment of the population who, they're entitled to their opinion, have the kind of the, lock them up and throw away the key mentality. Just a fun fact. Yeah, a fun fact here in California this year, 2020, the state allocated almost $16 billion to the CDCR to keep people locked up. And of that almost $16 billion, 4% is allocated for rehabilitation.
That's ridiculous. And let's assume that there's 4 goals of incarceration. Let's not assume. We know this, and that's what I teach my students. Number 1 is, punishment. Number 2 is to keep the community safe. Number 3 is to serve as a deterrent, not only to the people who are incarcerated, but to people in society. They look at people who are incarcerated, they say, well, in theory, I'm not going to commit a crime because look what might happen to me. And number 4, rehabilitation. And we know it does a terrible job of deterring. Incarceration does a terrible job of deterring people. And in general, it really does not lead to a decrease in crime. It's very good at punishing people. So,
Mm-hmm.
and rehabilitation, which is the fourth goal and a really a distant fourth, we should be spending at least a quarter of that budget on rehabilitation. And to learn that it's such a small percentage of the total budget, it's almost criminal, if not criminal.
Of the massive budget, massive. I mean, almost
Yeah,
$16
$16
billion.
Exactly. And the majority of that money, as you know, goes to salaries and benefits of correctional officers and administrators. It goes to pay for the construction of facilities, the managing of facilities, the running of facilities. Pay for the heat, the gas, the water, all that sort of thing. And it's not really going to help people. And it's really, I'm repeating myself, and my apologies, and I sound like a broken record. My apologies, but it's small wonder that few people are rehabilitated after they spend time behind bars.
One of the things that society can you remember is the majority are going to be released. And so, do you want the boot on their neck, just punish? I've said it before, punishment doesn't equal transformation. Punishment does not equal transformation. If you increase that budget, help people get into either vocational tracks, educational tracks, insight therapy, whatever it is, and truly and genuinely care about their rehabilitation, one day they're going to come out and they're going to be your neighbors. We're going to be your neighbors. And what type of neighbor do you want? Do you want one who was just completely punished for 20 years and you're thinking that he's going to come out and just be this model citizen? It doesn't work that way. Or one that has immersed himself in rehabilitative programming, education, vocational trades, and had his or her substance abuse problems addressed, thinking problems addressed. That's what we need. At the prison that Jason and I were at, when I first got there, I was there for 18 years and 2 months in Soledad. And there was one AA program that met in the cafeteria once a month. And over time, me and Jason and just hundreds of other guys said, well, there's not funding. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to start creating our own programs. And we had programs from everything from our AOD program to Toastmasters to a whole bunch of different AA, NA programs, Criminals and Gang Members Anonymous. Yeah. And we had We Care, which brought in the youth for us to talk to, not in a scared straight kind of way, but in us sharing our life stories to impact them, to deter them from coming in. And we just started creating it on our own. And by the time we left, I mean, in all three of the facilities that were there were over 120 different programs. And we saw the mindset of CDCR begin to shift a little bit before leaving, but there's definitely room for improvement. I mean, and then working out here, I think it's called employer development, right, Jason? Going to employers.
That's a huge mountain to climb. It really is, and we're actively in that fight, in that climb right now. Just in educating employers on the value of hiring formerly incarcerated people, because as you said, Dr. Ross, there's this huge stigma, like because you made a terrible choice 10, 20 years ago, you can't be trusted or you can't add value to this organization. And that's simply not the truth. There's, as I said earlier, there's people inside who are eager to contribute in positive and productive ways, and are equipped to do so more and more as the department is starting to see the value of rehabilitation and getting more in line with community-based organizations to provide it. People are going to be coming out of prison ready to go. They just need the opportunity. They need the opportunity.
Indeed. Yep. I mean, it's good to hear that you were so entrepreneurial inside the institution to create these classes. And many times if left to the administrators, this stuff doesn't get off the ground. So, I mean, you have to, and I think you probably learn through doing and through persistence how to start new programs behind bars and to get buy-in from the correctional officer, from fellow cons, from correctional officers, from the program staff. But the number one concern behind bars is security, and so security will always trump, well-intended programs.
Sure.
And so you got to explain to people whose main concern is security concerns why your program's not going to be a threat to security, which 99% of the time it won't. So,
Yeah.
Hey, Dr. Ross,
we can't count.
Go ahead.
I was going to say,
Jeff.
we can't count how many times we've been told, due to the safety and security of the institution,
Like,
we can't allow
man.
this. Okay, here we go.
Can't allow that. Can't allow that. Safety and security. That's the company line. Dr. Ross, we're working hard to get our podcast on the institutional channels inside of the California prison and hopefully in other prisons in the future. And we're pretty close to making it happen. I'm curious if you have a word for those who are incarcerated. There's over 100,000 people here in California, on a word of encouragement about academia or certain books that they could read, should read. What are your recommendations? Just whatever you have for them.
Wow, that's a big question. Certainly reading the work that I've done on convict criminology and that of my colleagues, but some general words. I don't know. I'm going to try that. First of all, number one is to really stop complaining, take responsibility for your education. You got to take responsibility for your own education and your own rehabilitation, and then I guess understand your weaknesses, try to address them in a strategic fashion, build upon your strengths, realize that in work and in life there's few shortcuts. Ignore the opinion of amateurs, and there's a lot of amateurs out there. Subject your work to thoughtful criticism by experts, strategically follow their advice, and then when you can, share your knowledge and your skills in a generous manner to people and organizations that are deserving of your expertise, and also be sensitive to the context in which you live, work, and play. So your time behind bars might be used very productively, in terms of earning some credits towards university, or even earning a bachelor's degree, and you can do a world of good beyond bars and start, behind bars, making connections.
There's some jewels right there.
Yeah, hit that rewind button right there.
Yeah, those are some deep principles. I appreciated that. That was great.
I'm telling you, we some of the things we teach them. If you got a victim story about the system or why you're there, it is what it is. You got about 3 minutes to share that story with us, but you got about a half hour if you got a responsible story. We believe in extreme ownership at CROP. Even if you're only 5% responsible, we want you to push in and own 100% of that 5%. Be proactive. Start empowering your own self. It's a much more empowering way and efficient and effective way to live your life when you're taking ownership. We always have the mirror and the window analogy. Be willing to look in the mirror. It's easier to look out the window at everyone and everything else that is hurting you. It's harder to look in the mirror, but if you can make it a practice, a discipline, and eventually a way of being, when we always look in the mirror first. What was my part? What was my contribution? How can I change it? How can I transform? What am I committed to for my future? In fact, we talk about, envisioning your future, who you want to be, what you want to do, and then living from that future with your actions in the present. Dr. Ross, I know we only have about seven minutes or so here left on the show. I want to thank you. And I also want to ask you is, I know you're out there in Washington, D.C. and different parts, but out here in California, there's a strong move against using what they call labels like prisoner and inmate and convict. A convict's like an old term. When we first went in 20 years ago, there's a difference between a convict and a prisoner.
No, there's a difference between a convict and an inmate. They still talk about it inside today.
Yeah.
They say,
There's guys that sometimes
I'm a convict. I'm a convict. I'm not an inmate.
Yeah,
So
I'm not an inmate. I'm a convict.
And interestingly, for us, when we came out, I've only been out of prison for about 8 months now. And when I would refer to my experience, I'd say, when I was an inmate, and I would be chastised for that by some of these restorative justice organizations. Like, don't label yourself. You're a person. You're a human being. So sorry, Rich. I just wanted to share that a little bit. It's
true. I mean, and I think about, sometimes it could be objectifying. I don't think that's the context for everybody. Jason and I have had this conversation recently.
Yeah.
Even after the Lisa Ling show, and context is everything. I remember our pants and shirt always had the word prisoner on it. And I remember like the first week getting out and being in Target or Walmart or malls and just being exposed to all these new colors. And I had this feeling that people could tell that I was just out of prison. And I didn't really connect the dots. And I don't know if it was because all my clothes always said prisoner. Anytime I visited my family, my pants had the word prisoner all the way down the leg in giant letters on the back. Or when I was found suitable for parole, I remember telling certain officers that I had known for over a decade, yeah, man, I'm going to go home. And I remember this like blank look over their face as if I wasn't meant to get out of prison. Like I was meant to be there. And I found that weird. And I wonder if it was because that us and them, us versus them type of labeling. I'm not sure, but I wondered if there was any type of pushback against that language out there.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, but I know what you're saying about the label convict versus inmate versus prisoner, and behind bars, those terms mean different things. And yes, we've received some pushback, but here's the thing: no self-respected, quote unquote, formerly incarcerated person I've talked to really prefers to be called formerly incarcerated. They'd rather be called convict or ex-convict. And I think there's a tendency in some liberal camps amongst restorative justice activists to somehow erase the word convict or ex-convict. And I can understand the objectification component and how you felt behind bars with respect to the types of clothing you wore, how correctional officers referred to you, that sort of thing. And among the Convict Criminology Network, we've had interesting and spirited discussions about changing our name from Convict Criminology to something different. And the question always sort of comes to a screeching halt when we say, okay, fine, well, what's going to be the new name? And none of the names seem appropriate for us. And so, I mean, for the time being, we're going to still be called Convict Criminology. This was the original name. It did have and continues to have some shock value. It does have some sort of branding component too. But these names, I think, in some respects, make outsiders happy. But just because you change the name doesn't necessarily change the process. And we see this all the time in rebranding organizations and networks and so on. It's sort of like old wine in new bottles. So that's kind of my take on it.
Thank you, Dr. Ross. Hey,
Sure.
We'd love to stay in touch with you. Many of our friends are academics. Some of our close friends have earned master's degrees on the inside from accredited universities, and if we'd like to get some insight or some mentoring or some advice on how they can earn their PhDs in the future, where that's available.
That's my retirement plan, by the way.
Speak to it real quick before we close out, Jay.
Yeah, that's my dream. When I'm gonna do 20 great years of work in the reentry space out here with CROP, and then when I get into my golden years, I'm gonna go back to school and get my PhD. So that's my retirement plan.
Why not do it part-time? Do it part-time. Work on your PhD part-time.
Well, I'm truth of the matter is I'm a part-time employee for Crop, and I'm a full-time dad of two young boys, two babies.
Sure.
Two babies, a 2-year-old and a 4-month-old. Yeah, so time is not a lot of negotiation there. So
understood. Yeah, family first.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
All right. So listen, if people want to get in touch with me, they can write me, care of the School of Criminal Justice at University of Baltimore, 1420 North Charles Street, and Baltimore, Maryland, 2101. And then if they've got access to the internet, then just type in my 3 names into your preferred web browsers, and chances are you're going to find my website at or near the top of the list. It is jefferyandross.com, and there's a contact page, and the contact page has my work email, which is jross@uvault.edu. I do my best to respond to all requests. I can't help everybody, but I try my best. I can often link them to somebody who can do a better job than I can. So something to think about as we move forward and try to address the challenges of incarceration, of prison conditions, prisoner reentry.
Great. I'll definitely post those across all of our social media platforms, Dr. Ross, as well as on our podcasting platform. So thank you for being on the Prison Post today. Appreciate the conversation. We appreciate the conversation and appreciate the work you've been doing for years.
Thanks for inviting me.
Dr. Ross.
Yep, and keep up the great work that you guys are doing.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day.
Take care.
You too. Yep, take care.
Thank you for listening to The Prison Post, a production of the Crop Organization. We'll be sharing more stories from the world of prison reform and restorative justice, so please join us. You can listen to The Prison Post on all major podcasting platforms. Subscribe to our video cast on YouTube and like us on Facebook at The Prison Post and at Creating Restorative Opportunities and Programs.